Very welcome along to another episode of the Talking Sport podcast. It's Daniel here, joined on the line by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
Not too bad, Sean. Listen, another crazy weekend of sports in general.
Yeah, I think behind closed doors is bringing a certain amount of craziness, especially you see in football, in the rugby as well. The GAA is back, which was great to see, but brought some interesting results and interesting scorelines right across the country rather. And yeah, I think it's just great to see that level of sport back, especially in Ireland with the GAA, for players. And I think the GAA Go, we spoke about it a few weeks ago with Stephen Duff about, every county needing to stream their own games, and now the GAA have come in under it, and we can see the action a lot better, and you've got people that are able to watch games that wouldn't have been able to see. I saw a tweet somewhere that I think someone in America was able to watch a down league game for the first time in like 20 years. So it's stuff like that, and I think it's just great. And behind closed doors it isn't the same, but I think everyone's sort of adjusting to life without fans.
Yeah, and I guess it's a lot of stuff has kind of been accelerated because of COVID. Like, so that streaming services, I guess, we're all down the line, but because of a necessity of it with COVID, it's great seeing that coming across the board. And like you mentioned, that example is amazing that the GAA has such widespread, diaspora all across the world. So it's absolutely amazing that these games can now be watched. Like, all of a sudden, we've so many games to talk about, so many games to watch, as opposed to the couple that Alliance National League Sunday and RT picks.
Yeah, exactly. And more players are getting more and more exposure. And, with the level of streaming, more and more players might want to, play and dedicate themselves to the county setup for a year. So I think that's all crucial in the GAA side of it. And, you're seeing other things happen in other sports that you just wouldn't necessarily win. And there's a few incidents in the golf where, because there's no spectators, golfers are losing their balls a lot more. Brooks Koepka lost the ball in the face of a bunker. Matt Wallace, I think, on the 8th hole, or the par 5 today on the front nine in St Andrews, lost his ball, and he was able to find it because of the camera work. But it's sort of those things that you don't really see happen without spectators. So everyone's kind of adjusting to life.
Absolutely. So we'll start with the Premier League. We're going to talk about GAA later on, as well as the Champions Cup final in rugby. But we'll start off with the Premier League, an absolutely crazy Spurs game there and a finish. Try and sum that up for 82 minutes. I was looking at Spurs as potential, could definitely maybe mount a title challenge. Jose had them playing 3-0 up. And what happened in that last 8 minutes?
I think it's what should have happened for the last 80 minutes as well. I thought West Ham were so timid, and they started the second half well and created so many chances and really should have scored. I think they should have scored late in the first half as well. And for all, Tottenham were really good in that first 20 minutes. They just took their foot off the gas. Harry Kane hit the post. Bale should have scored late on. Look, they should have the game killed off. But, that's a sign of a team that's, maybe lacking a little bit, of something. And I don't know what it is. But, defensively, I thought they were just so gettable at. And I think West Ham, I think they had 7 or 8 corners. They didn't use them really well. They should have, created more. And, I think that any team that comes up against Tottenham, yes, they're going to know, that they're going to have to defend well to beat them. But I think that, they don't have to do much to score. And I think that's a huge issue. I think it's 10 games now without a clean sheet. Their defence is cost them points at home, losing to Everton, drawn at home to Newcastle, drawn today. They're, points that you just can't afford to drop if you're going for a title race. And I think, look, with Bale coming in, there's a sense of optimism around the Tottenham camp, but defensively I'd be extremely worried. And it was the fact that for 80 minutes I was really disappointed with West Ham, because I thought, look, they could have scored and they should have scored, and they should have created more. And for a side that did so well at Leicester and against Wolves and actually created quite a few chances, they didn't look like they were up for it really. And the second half they kind of must have got a fire from David Moyes in the team talk, and because they really came out pretty well, and they should have scored. And you look, I just think for the first 20 minutes Tottenham were unbelievable, and should have really put the game to bed. But you can't afford in the Premier League to let games sit, and they did. And West Ham inevitably, albeit surprisingly, came back.
Absolutely. And I guess Gareth Bale scores that chance and makes it 4-2 right at the end, but look, that papers over the cracks again. Like, they're 3-0 up at half time. You mentioned the Newcastle game. I can't really remember a team Like, if you think about that Newcastle game and the West Ham game, throwing 4 points away so stupidly. Do you know what I mean? I can't remember a time where a team would do that. Like, it made no sense to me, both the Newcastle, how they let Newcastle back in, and then West Ham 3-0 up with 8 minutes to go. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge issue because, like you said, they've dropped points at home in games they should not have dropped. And it's every couple of weekends now we're sitting here going, Tottenham left 2 points after them. And, if they are to mount a title challenge, and if they are to bridge that 15 point gap to the leaders, to Liverpool and Manchester City, then it's not going to look bad now. But when you come to February, March, and when you're 8 points behind them, when it should really be 4, it should really be 2 or 3 points. And I think that's where they're struggling at the moment. And I just think it does the confidence no harm. And I just thought defensively they were awful. I mean, Reguilon is really good going forward, and he looks a decent player. But defensively, I thought, for that second goal, everyone on that side just got turned, and Yarmolenko played a lovely little ball for Kofal. But and Serge Aurier as well. I mean, I think everyone knows about his defensive capabilities. But again,
would you be worried Matt Doherty not starting?
Yeah, look, and it is frustrating. You'd imagine, for Matt Doherty, because he's made this big move. He's probably been, suggested that he'd start a lot, because Mourinho has been openly critical of Serge Aurier in the past. And with defending like that today, I don't think Matt will find it too long before he's back in the side. But the two centre halves for 40 minutes, I thought, or for 60 minutes, I thought Sanchez was pretty good. He was quite strong in his duels with Antonio. But just as soon as the pressure comes on, and as soon as the West Ham started attacking with a bit of edge, Tottenham just crumbled, and you can't afford to do that. And the first goal so avoidable, with a header from Balbuena, and all of a sudden you're in a game. And you always kind of, once it was still 3-0, there's a little bit inside you that thought, West Ham could just get one here. And as soon as they got the one, you thought, oh, here we go. And then the second goal comes in, and again, so avoidable. Sanchez gets in a horrendous position at the front post, and before you know it, Tottenham have dropped another 2 points.
Absolutely. And talking about, Tottenham as title challengers, off the back, if they had won that game 3-0, sounds a bit, premature, but it is that kind of season that it'll probably end up being a lot less points. We did kind of half think that could happen, but I guess the reality is setting in now, where teams are dropping points. Manchester City have dropped 5 already, I think, and Liverpool have dropped points as well. It's going to be that kind of season where maybe 80 points to 90 wins it. Can a team like Spurs or an Everton or a team like that compete for a title or mount a title challenge? You look at maybe Leicester City, it's been predominantly the top teams, and over the last couple of years, obviously, it's just been City, Liverpool. Do you see teams outside City, Liverpool mounting the challenge?
Yeah, I think, sides are capable of it. And I think it's whether they take the opportunity and want it enough to really, because I think it is there for them. And I think, with everything that's happened, the slow start to the season, I think that one of the big problems over the last couple of years for those teams has been, Liverpool and Leicester City getting off to unbelievably good starts and sort of having the league wrapped up between the two of them at Christmas. You never really fancied anyone else. Leicester was second last Christmas, had a brilliant start, and they just sort of faded away. But I think ultimately, Man City had lost games at that stage in the league was a foregone conclusion for Liverpool. But both those sides have got off to really good starts in the last 3 or 4 years when they've been at the top of the league. And I think now that they haven't, I think it's on teams like Tottenham, Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, if they are, or Everton, if they are to break and really put themselves forward as top 3, they need to get on a good winning run here. And I think there's good results for a good result for Everton, good result for Manchester United, and Chelsea dropping points, Arsenal losing away again to a top big side, and no team has really taken that opportunity. And if they are, Tottenham again losing today or dropping points today, you really got to think it's between the big two. As much as they're going to drop from that, nearly 100 points as they have been getting it, or as close to that, it's really on someone, if they are to compete, that they're going to have to go out and really go for the league and take the league by storm.
Absolutely. Well, moving on to one of those challengers, Liverpool, and their match against Everton. This could be a massive game in that title race off the back of those couple of injuries. What were your thoughts on there's so many incidents to start with? I suppose the Van Dijk, Pickford's tackle on Van Dijk, Mane's offside. I thought Richarlison's tackle on Thiago was a disgrace, really, to be honest with you. Like, I think he was really trying to do him in. There was a lot of stuff. I don't think I've ever heard a team afterwards, requesting, VAR to have a look at it or review the game. But, Liverpool do have a case on those 3 incidents anyway.
Yeah, I think, for the Pickford Van Dijk one, I think, it is a red card. It's a horrendous tackle, but for Pickford, you can make a little bit more allowances because it kind of looks like he's expecting the ball to come to Van Dijk and Van Dijk to get a shot cleanly, and sort of him spreading himself and making a tackle, and with the ball just kind of shooting past it. It is really horrendous, and you can talk about lack of malice, but it is endangering the safety of an opponent. And look, I think if it was offside, it was barely, and I think it still should have been reprimanded and still should have been a red card. And I think it would have changed the whole course of the game, because Everton were flying up Liverpool were flying up until then, and really could have scored a couple of more goals. Mane took his goal really well, and then after Van Dijk comes off and he's gonna be out for some time, it looks, with having to get surgery on that knee. But after that, Liverpool just looked at a completely different side. Matip and Gomez at the back, nowhere near the level of Van Dijk and Adrian and Cole. And we people have spoken about when Klopp was close enough and had Karius in goal, and he went out and he brought in Alisson and Van Dijk in the 2 areas where he spent 80+ million, 90+ million to get, and now all of a sudden they're left without them, and Alisson, I think, is going to be out for another couple of weeks. And interesting to see how quick Van Dijk will recover from it. But Liverpool, they could have really done with a win just for morale, and I thought Liverpool probably edged it. They just you think about the 2 goals, 2 headers, and how often have we seen that from Liverpool conceding 2-headed goals? Not too often in the past, because of Van Dijk and that aerial presence. And I think it was a game played with high energy. I think it was a proper derby game, if you can call that. It's probably the closest we've seen to a proper derby game without fans. And even a couple of tackles, Van Dijk left a little bit in on Rodriguez and Calvert-Lewin early before the injury, so maybe there was that little bit of bad blood in the game. A couple of heavy tackles, but there's no excusing the Richarlison and the Pickford tackles. They're 2 horrendous tackles to 2 huge Liverpool players. And the referee got the Richarlison one right, definitely, but he might, and it'd be interesting to see what comes out of the review on Pickford's tackle, and to see what happens, because it was a really horrendous tackle.
Well, moving on to Van Dijk and his absence, I thought the Michael Keane goal, I've never seen the Liverpool defence just like lack leaders for a header. I looked when that ball was crossed in when the replay of the goal, like, who is going to head the ball now? The Van Dijk's not there. There was no leader. Like, there's Henderson in there, but like it didn't seem like he was imposing figure. How big a loss is he? Because you mentioned that you still think Liverpool can challenge for the title, but without Van Dijk, you have to think that they are definitely underdogs in terms of compared to City, like off the back of that injury. Like, that injury is possibly, if you look at Laporte last year for City, that loss was huge. And everyone said at the time, imagine Liverpool lost Van Dijk. Well, they've now lost him. This is the real test for that Liverpool team and the strength and depth. And maybe Klopp's lack of transfers on the centre-back might come back to haunt him, exactly the same as Pep Guardiola last year.
Yeah, and like I said, that when that ball comes in, for Michael Keane, he just gets a free leap at it, and never mind someone competing with him. And even if you look at the Tottenham game today, Harry Kane made a couple of really good headers at the front post, and it's that role that Mourinho gave Drogba, to not mark anyone at a corner and to just go and attack it and clear it. And I think Liverpool just, without Van Dijk, they're not a huge side. Matip is big, Fabinho's big, but the front 3 aren't gonna win any balls from corners and head them away for you. And look, it is such a huge loss where we won't know how long will be. I think it'll be one of those injuries that will come out of 7 months, and in 4 or 5 months he could be back playing. I think it's just going to be the way it's portrayed to the media. But you still have to fancy Liverpool, because going forward they look unbelievable. And I think they might go back to that sort of way they were pre Van Dijk, whereas we'll score more than you. And I think we'll see a lot of 3-2s, 4-2s, 5-4s, those kind of games, because Liverpool, for him, how vulnerable they are at the back, they're still unbelievably good going forward. And I think that's what will keep them in that title race. And Mane, Salah, you haven't really seen the best of Firmino for a while. I wonder if at times this year, will he use Jota a little bit more and maybe play Salah down the middle? But there is doubt in the minds of Liverpool fans and their players, and it'll be very interesting to see how Klopp deals with this, because for so long in his Liverpool reign, he hasn't really had that huge amount of adversity. Lost Alisson at times last season, still had Adrian, and just came straight into a winning side. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Klopp deals with it, and how he deals with Europe, because Europe is coming down the line, and whether he goes for it, rest players, because they can't afford any more injuries. You think if they get an injury to Andy Robertson or Fabinho in midfield, then they're really up against it.
Absolutely. I thought Thiago's pass for Mane for the offside, what ended up being an offside Henderson goal, was world class, and I definitely think he can be a massive figure in that will scores more than you kind of mantra. But look, we'll move on to City Arsenal. You wanted to have a quick word on Arsenal, and you were disappointed with them overall, particularly second half.
Yeah, look, I thought they never caused Manchester City any real problems. I think it was just I think it was a horrendous second half. Really, there was very little happened, and Manchester City just cruised to victory and never had to get out of second or third gear. And if teams like Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea, like we've spoken about, are to break the top two, they're going to have to go out and really compete for it and really take it away, because at the moment it's Liverpool and Manchester City who are just sitting pretty in the top two. And you think of Everton, how much this year they've improved and how much they're really willing to work in games and sort of grind out results. Like 1-0 away to Tottenham is a result we haven't seen from Everton in a while. And those are the kind of moments that really drive you along in a title run, in a top four run. And I was very disappointed with Arsenal. I thought they just didn't really have the right game plan. Mikel Arteta is still a very young manager, still had a really good start to his Arsenal career, less than a year in the job. But I think if they are to bridge and really kick on again and get into that top four, they're going to really need to find a result from somewhere away from home against the big six.
Absolutely. I know FA Cup aside, they haven't really done that in the Premier League, and their away record against the big six is nearly as bad as Everton, to be honest with you. So look, you wanted to talk about the Chelsea game, particularly to do with the amount of 3-0s. It was a crazy game. I thought Timo Werner finally delivering a performance that we all kind of knew and saw from the Bundesliga, but it was still a nice to see, because it has taken a while. I guess he's been kind of making the chances, and I was actually surprised to see Frank playing at number 9. I thought he'd stick with Tammy because that seemed to work against Palace, but I guess a small bit of credit to Frank Lampard in the sense that he managed to get his team line up right eventually in terms of going forward. But defensively, again, another 3-3. It's that kind of behind closed doors football, like a pre-season international match kind of feel to a small bit of a fake game in terms of, I don't know if we'd see this in a normal season, that kind of game.
Yeah, I thought Chelsea were really good going forward, and I think it's probably one of the first times they've clicked with the current signings that they brought in, and I thought they were full value at at 2-0 and really looking pretty nailed on to win it. And then Southampton just, and I think a lot of sides now are going to take, joy from Southampton and West Ham and think, if we just keep ourselves in the game up until the 75th, 80th minute, we can really press on. And that's why I was disappointed with Arsenal in that sense, because they're still in the game. And how often have they been in a game against top six with 10 or 15 minutes to go? And, Southampton managed to get a result out. And even the way the goal came, a sloppy free kick that came in, was a good header by Zuma, but they don't react, and sort of a scrappy enough goal to go in past Kepa. And that's a 2 points dropped at home when they're in a really good position to win the game. And, Frank Lampard at the moment just looks like, it sort of looks like maybe he's lacking a little bit of, I don't know, something. Is it really, not enthusiasm, but is he lacking that little bit of, leadership to get this team together? Does he really know how to deal with this rut that they're under in terms of conceding goals? And I'd be worried of Chelsea, because Timo Werner can score 25 goals this season, but if you're leaking in goals as easily as they have done this season, you'd be worried. And the fact that Kepa was in goal again and everything with that, and I just think, look.
Yeah, so Mendy's out for a couple of weeks potentially on that front. That could be massive.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Kepa had to come back in because of that, and all the negative connotations that were around Kepa, and the money they spent on Mendy, and just I think there's something lacking there at Stamford Bridge at the moment. And a lot of people tip them for high hopes they can still achieve that this season, but they're gonna have to do it the hard way, and they're gonna have to find a way of eking out results, because it's not as if they've really bad defenders there, they're just lacking a little bit of solidity or something at the back, and Frank Lampard just doesn't seem to have the answers.
Yeah, I suppose another kind of weird game, I guess, the Manchester United Newcastle game. I want to get your thoughts on this because 1-1 with a few minutes left and it ends up being 4-1 and a great win for United. I did think their second goal the United scored was unreal football, and I don't know if I've seen a goal scored by an Ollie's team like that with such build-up play like it. I know it was a bit of a counter-attack, but the passing, it was deadly, and it shows you the talent that Manchester United team, and they're definitely underachieving at the moment. And I suppose that last 20 minutes maybe show the potential there. If you have a Donny van de Beek and you get him in the team, he was involved in that passage of play and that goal. You get the Pogba, but again, we're going back to what is United's best team. I don't think Ollie knows that. I don't think anyone really knows it, to be honest with you. But what were your thoughts on the game overall, and Ollie Gunnar going forward in terms of can he get all those players on the same pitch and make them work in a system that works for Manchester United?
Yeah, look, it's a good win in the end for Manchester United. It's a win we've become accustomed to with Ole Gunnar away from home. Winning, against those kind of sides, but winning in the manner they did and sort of pulling away from them in the end in the second half. Newcastle were horrendous. Bar John Joe Shelby and maybe Saint Maximin. I don't think many of them Newcastle players can take anything from the game. I thought they were just, brutal, really. They just got they kind of scored at the wrong time and never settled into the game. Manchester United were really good. Yet, look, the quality of Fernandes. He mightn't have had necessarily his best game. And I talked to a few people about this, he might have given the ball a few times, had a goal disallowed, missed a penalty, but he still came up goods when it was needed. And I think he's one of those players that you can allow to do that. You can sort of allow to drift in and out of games because the quality he has and the ability he has from a set piece. And Manchester United with McTominay in midfield, Pogba not playing, there always seems to be an issue with Ollie's best side, but I thought McTominay was really good. And I think he gives that Manchester United side a lot of legs that, Matic maybe doesn't have anymore. Luke Shaw, again, was sort of unlucky for the goal, but even throughout the game, I didn't think he was great. And I thought Newcastle could have targeted him more. Maybe Saint Maximin came over to the right-hand side to take Shaw on a little bit more. But, Manchester United, you always know that they have the ability to score those goals. And I think it was sort of big for Rashford that he got the one there at the end because, he's a really, really important player for them now because, he seems to be the one that they're going to play up front. And he seems to be the one now in whatever Manchester United side they play. Sometimes they play Martial and Greenwood, but a constant in that side always seems to be Rashford. And he's so important for Ollie going forward, him and Fernandes, that partnership.
Absolutely. It'd be interesting, just a quick word on how do you think Cavani might fit into that team? It almost feels like no one's really been talking about Cavani with Bale. You know what I mean? It just, he's about to start for Manchester United probably next week. Where would you play him? Do you see that possibly working? And maybe, having an out-and-out number 9 might allow Ole Gunnar to potentially get a Van de Beek or a Pogba in the team as well.
Yeah, I think Cavani's going to score goals for them because he sort of is a goal scorer. He hasn't played in 7 months competitively in 7 months in club football. I think 33 years of age, is he going to press as well as he could have done maybe when he was 27? Probably not. Is he going to do as well as Rashford would have done away from home against the Newcastle when you want a lot of direct running and getting the side up the pitch? Probably not. And he sort of maybe brought on. He's probably one of those players to have on the bench, like what they had for Ibra for that year when Ibra came off the bench and scored really important goals in the cup final. I think it was against Southampton, scored against Liverpool, I think, in a big game there at Old Trafford. So I think that's the sort of role Cavani's going to play. And at the moment when he first comes into the side in the Champions League, coming in off the bench and maybe scoring goals, because at the moment they have a lot of wingers, Greenwood, Martial, but they haven't really got that kind of number 9, if you like, and Cavani certainly fits that mould.
Yeah, a bit like Gareth Bale. I could potentially actually see that those two signings working out with Gareth Bale and Cavani. I know Gareth Bale had his miss there against West Ham, but be interesting to see. It's exciting times for the Premier League, I guess. But we want to move on now, moving ahead to the GAA, and again, just touching on what we said at the top of the show. It's bloody great to have it back. I know we were kind of on. It was a Wednesday show on Inter-County. There is those kind of tough questions, and there will continue to be if restrictions are, enforced in terms of level 4 or 5 or wherever level we're going to. But it was great to see Inter-County back, and I think a lot of people were saying what we were kind of thinking people would say, myself included, that I didn't realize how much we missed until I saw like Donegal against Tyrone, or I watched Mayo Galway, or so. You know what I mean? And the fact we have all these streaming services now, and it's a lot more widely available. People can play GAA Go. Some people watch 4 games on Saturday in a row. Like when have we been able to do that before for GAA? Like it's class. It really is.
Yeah, and I think everyone that has been skeptical about the GA's return has probably been skeptical on the health and safety. I think everyone knew what role
which
the
is
GA,
important, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone knew the role the GA would play if it did come back. But as long as everything can be done safely, and the players' safety and well-being and the coaches is being looked after, which I think it is. I think there's a lot of good protocols in place. I think it was the Roscommon management I saw. Everyone was wearing masks, all the management, and I think those sort of things, the umpires wearing masks. I think everything like that is just important, and I think it's even important for the optics of it and for people to see that the GA are taking this really seriously. And but I think, look, it's just brilliant to see the games back and some really interesting scorelines. And I think Gaelic games is going to be almost a little bit better for the behind the closed doors, judging by some of the scorelines that we saw racked up.
Yeah, and a friend of the show, David Goff, I thought his image of him and his umpire social distancing at halftime and masks, and people could say what they want about it and about optics, but optics are very important for a reason, because the GA, off the back of those videos of people not social distancing, and you compare that with League of Ireland, which we talked about, which we won't get into, but I did think it was great. And I think there was a greater responsibility taken up by coaches, by players, by referees, by umpires. It was great to see. But yeah, some of those crazy games, let's touch on them. Galway, Mayo. I think 2020 will not be complete, until a Mayo win a Sam Maguire. Like, can you imagine, 2020, finally they do in a year where it's behind closed doors. But there's definitely potential in that side. There has been for years, but they seem to have a good blend of experience and youth.
Yeah, and I think Aidan O'Shea played really well, and he played in a position where he's probably been at his best for Mayo, in and around the square at number 14. And I think they played pretty well. They took their points well. They have a couple of new guys who look pretty good, and that's something that Mayo always haven't had. That if you think of that Mayo team that around 2016 where they were in those All Ireland finals against Dublin, is they were a very set up 15. There was probably 2 or 3 players that could come in if it was needed. But you think now that they're trying to branch out, and maybe the likes of Jason Doherty, who has been a consistent starter for Mayo, maybe he's been put under that little bit more pressure at training, and there's more and more players that can come in. And David O'Connor, who's been there from such a young age, Keelan O'Connor, and maybe they're pushing on the standard, because Keelan O'Connor looked really sharp today, and that's the thing with Mayo. If they can bring those players along, the sort of side they have, the resilience, the character that's in that Mayo side. And if they are to win the All Ireland this year, it would sort of be as bonkers as you'd expect for a Mayo to win an All Ireland.
Yeah, it would just be absolutely ridiculous. I wish them well. Like, to be fair, they're one of the best teams to watch. Always. Particularly, I think there was one championship, was it 87? It's either 17, 18, 90. They all blend to one, where they kept the championship going single-handedly with their games. But a word on Dublin. I don't know if you got a lot of rumours going around that Dublin were firing and training. I seem to get a lot more than you usually do about the Dubs, and they were really kind of focused on really putting a marker down against Meath, and then they went, I think it was 1-4, so a point up. What happened from there? Like, do you know what I mean? I definitely think Dessie Farrell will be disappointed in that ultimate result, albeit they did win.
Yeah, and I maybe the thing with Dublin is because the league is almost potentially out of risk. Although if Kerry lose to Donegal next week and Dublin beat Galway and things go their way, Dublin win the league. But I don't think the league is anywhere near the priority, and I think Dublin are sort of gearing up for a couple of weeks' time when the championship kicks in for real. And yeah, you would be disappointed with Dublin. James McCarthy wasn't playing. Maybe that Paul Mannion and guys like that. And James McCarthy's had a really good year for Ballymun in the club championship. And, maybe someone like him is more important than ever, really. And, there was some really strong performances. I thought Dean Rock just sort of took off from where he left off and became Dublin's all-time top scorer, and taking over from Jimmy Keaveney. So that's an incredible achievement, considering that I think he made his championship debut and at 24 years of age. I think he's now 30, 31. And, that's an unbelievable stat when you think of how much Keelan O'Connor has played to become the leading record scorer in GA. And Keelan O'Connor has always been playing for about 10 years now, I think. So it's an unbelievable achievement by Dean Roth to take over from Jimmy Keaveney. And, Dublin, they're a little bit sloppy at times from what I saw. And, I think really ill-disciplined in the tackle and conceded a lot of fouls, which you can't afford to do because it just keeps teams in the game once they're able to pop over the freeze. And a lot of people were talking about the spread and Dublin by 7, and Dublin were looking sharp, and I think they got off to a really good start. They were kind of get to the goal by a short kick out, and I think that's the 11th goalkeeper Andy McEntee used with Mead. So I think that's it's been a huge problem for them, but I think Dublin capitalised on that. And maybe they weren't really as pushed. They were pushed, but I don't think maybe they were as pushed as hard as they could have been in that sense, and maybe they would have found another gear.
Yeah, and I guess an important thing to know for the championship, big games are coming in 2 weeks for most counties, but for a team like Dublin, they don't actually have to peak for like another month or 6 weeks, whereas Donegal Tyrone are playing each other in a couple of weeks. It's different, you know what I mean? And it's obviously, it shows the farcical system, which is the provincial championships. But a word on that Donegal Tyrone shadow boxing game, I suppose. I know it was an important league game in its own right, but I guess, the bigger game is the knockout Ulster Championship football. And this is, I suppose, a bonus of COVID and the knockout, that we're going to get those two teams going at each other again in a proper do-or-die championship game.
Yeah, and two sides that have been, thereabouts in the last 5 or 6 years, and been in All-Ireland finals and being competitive, and they're going to be knocked out, and one of them's going to be knocked out is going to be a huge coup for the rest of the country. It was sort of an interesting game. I caught glimpses of it. Tyrone maybe weren't as fluid attacking offensively. I think it was Joe Brolly tweeted that this was because the last 10 years of putting nothing into attacking football, and he, if you watch the Tyrone Club Championship, you watch Trillock with the likes of Lee Brennan and how unbelievably talented and good they are going forward, and maybe just it hasn't filtered into the county side as of yet. And Michael Murphy was Michael Murphy, and I think it's going to be an unbelievable game in a couple of weeks, and considering it's going to be behind closed doors, you don't know what to expect. You can imagine what 10 or 15,000 people crammed in watching that game would be like, but I think it's just the way of the world at the moment, and it'll still be an unbelievable game. And it'll be a really important game, because if either side can win that, they get the real momentum from beating the top tier county going into the final stage of the Ulster Championship, and they'll fancy their chances.
Absolutely, and yeah, it's just, I can't wait for those kind of games, knockout. And even the West Ham Dublin game, I guess there's a small bit of novelty to it because it is knockout. Dublin will wipe the floor of Westmeath, but there is a small bit of excitement, and you never know, this could be the day it ends. So look, we're looking forward to that, and we'll have a proper inter-county preview. We'll get Stephen back on the podcast, but before we go on the weekend review, you wanted to have a word on the Champions Cup final, and particularly Simon Zebo's performances, and I suppose a word on that, and then your kind of opinions on him not being able to play for Ireland. Now, this is something that's been going on for years. Every nation approaches it differently. Every nation has different leagues, for example, and different situations. But what were your thoughts on the game, first of all, Simon Zebo's performance, and then that Irish issue that has cropped up again?
Yeah, well, ultimately, there's no right or wrong way for the IRFU to do this, and Zebo has been in France now for I think three seasons. He left after the passing of Anthony Foley, and got that chance to play and make an unbelievable living for himself in France. So, but I think now that Ireland haven't achieved what they wanted to achieve in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and there has been a big gap now that Rob Kearney has moved on from the fullback position, and Simon Zebo, it seems, is playing as well as he ever has. And I think a lot of people are still sort of frustrated now looking, because it's not as if Ireland has, for as much as Ireland have unbelievable strength and depth in their younger sides, and you think of Leinster's academy, in a position like fullback, which is so important, and you see someone like Simon Zebo playing in the biggest stage in European club rugby, you'd have to wonder why he isn't allowed to play with Ireland. And there was exceptions made in the past with Johnny Sexton. There's been exceptions made in the past with Wales as well, and England. So I think it is a huge thing. Of course, the RFU need to protect their product, which is the 4 provincial sides. But I still think, exceptions can be made for Simon Zebo, a player of Simon Zebo's quality, who would more than likely start for Ireland or be there or thereabouts. And at the moment, Jordan Larmour's played a little bit on the wing for Leinster. So, maybe the reshuffle could actually suit Ireland, and Zebo could get back to playing, and playing a fullback, playing on the wing. He's a very versatile player, and I think it's not as if Zebo is, sort of taking the what's the word, but taking the decision to leave Munster in that sense. Munster is still a really good side without him, but Simon Zebo is an unbelievable player, and I just think the IRFU maybe need to bite the bullet on this one and get him back, because he's from Cork, he grew up there, he's a passionate Irish man, and I still think we should see him in the Irish setup.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of rugby fans would say, or Irish rugby fans would say, look, we want to look to the future and youth, and I guess Simon Zebo would be at the other end of the scale. But, and they'd almost, after a couple of years of not bringing him back and then bringing him back, I don't detect a huge amount of appetite for a lot of fans in terms of bringing someone back. I think there's almost a pride in the rules, and obviously we know the pros and cons in terms of they want to maintain the incident provisions, but you genuinely think there should be exceptions made and Ireland should get their best team on the pitch. I guess coming off the back of that World Cup, again, Ireland got to go in 4-year cycles. We're almost a year into this cycle already, and there's been very little rugby, so it's different to other cycles. Ireland's 2023 World Cup is the aims. Can you see Simon Zebo being part of that World Cup? And it's a 2023, isn't it? 2023 World Cup. And can you see Simon Zebo being part of that Irish squad? And does that fit in well with an ultimate 4-year strategy of building towards that World Cup?
Yeah, look, I think we're seeing a change in mindset. I think I saw a lot of tweets about it. It's sort of, when you see him playing as well as he did on the big stage, and you see Finn Russell for Scotland playing on the biggest stage for Racing, and the two of them, and Donegal Ryan's there as well. I just think, if Ireland are to really capitalise on what has been a really golden stage for Irish rugby, and to break that barrier of a World Cup quarter final and break the World Cup shackles, if you like, then Simon Zebo could well be in the equation. And I think if it gets to the stage where you've 10 or 12 players moving over, and the provincial sides are a huge amount weaker as a result, then I think it becomes a problem. And maybe then, but there has been exceptions made in the past, and I think Simon Zebo is of a good enough quality for an exception to be made. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes, because I know Joe Schmidt was very negative on it, and he didn't want anything to do with Zebo, if you like. I wonder if Andy Farrell is different, and maybe there is conversations being had. It'll be interesting to see, but a performance like that from Zebo, albeit in a losing effort in a European final, of course, is gonna rattle a few brains in the IRFU, and especially now with the Six Nations coming back, and with all the the work towards a Six Nations in next year, and a World Cup in a few years. Is Simon Zebo going to be playing for Ireland? I think it's one to watch, and well, it'll be interesting to see if Andy Farrell gets questioned now when the Six Nations come back about Simon Zebo, and be interesting to see what his answer is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rugby coming up soon with the Six Nations. That there's a serious amount of games coming up for rugby, which I know rugby was one of the last sports to get back, so it's great to have it back. And that's really it, Sean, on the weekend review. Listen, appreciate you taking the time. We get us on @TacklinSport on all social media channels. On Thursday we'll look ahead with our Premier League predictions to the weekend's action. But on Wednesday we have a special interview with former Dublin hurler and Coola hurler, two-time All-Ireland club champion Sean Tracy, who will join us for an interview. It's a really good, open, honest interview, not just about his club career, but just the reasons he kind of stepped away from the inter-county scene too. So I think it's great. I think you'll enjoy it, and we look forward to bringing that to you on Wednesday. But that's all for today's show, and all that's left to say is goodbye from Sean.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from myself. We'll chat to you on Wednesday. Have a great week.